Hello and welcome to this episode where we shall be talking about equations that involve surds, okay? Remember in the last discussion we said a surd is basically any number or any expression that is under a root sign, okay? So how do we go about equations that have surds? So I just summarized the steps that we can follow to solve any sort of equation that has any surds that are involved, okay? So step number one is saying that we have to isolate the surd, which means we must leave the square root sign on one side of the equal signs. Let everything that is not part of the square root move to the other side of the equal signs, okay? So I always prefer to leave the square root on the left-hand side and then take everything to the right, okay? Then step number two is to square both sides of the equal signs, okay? Square either sides of the equal signs so that we can eliminate, okay? So that we can eliminate the square root sign. Because remember, for us to get rid of the square root, we must square both sides, okay? So that is the purpose of squaring both sides. Then step number three, you need to expand the brackets if there are any brackets, okay? Sometimes, okay, let's just talk with what we know. Okay, so if this is maybe x plus 2 and maybe plus something like x is equal to, I'll just put a 0, it's fine. Just use a 0. So we said isolate. So isolating, you have to move this to that side. So you'll have just root x plus 2 is equal to a negative x. And then the second step, you square. So when you square the brackets, this root sign falls away. You just have x plus 2 is equal to just x squared, okay? Then, remember in this case, we don't have any brackets, so that's why we say any. So if there exists any square brackets, you just have to open them up using the FOIL. Then create a standard equation. Remember, standard equation is where everything is one side and then we have a 0 left on the other, okay? Then you can solve the equation using the factorization or the quadratic formula. And then the last step that most learners miss is to test the answers. For these questions, it's a requirement, it's a mandate that we test our answers to see which of the answers will satisfy the original expression or equation that was given. And then we just go with the answer that satisfies, and the answer that doesn't, we just use the NA, or you just cross out the equal signs just to show us that you've chosen at least one of the correct answers. So with that, you get all your full marks. Now, the good thing about this type of questions is that the minimum is usually 4, but it can even go as far as 6 marks. That's how examiners are generous, okay? All right, so with part A, okay, so we can use this first one just as an example, just to show how do we go step by step, step by step. Okay, so with the first one, we can see from our steps, isolating the side, it's already been done for us. The square root is on its own, okay? Everything is on the other side. So we go to step number 2, where we have to square both sides, okay? So square this side, and then we square this side as well. So when we square that side, the root sign is gonna fall away. We're gonna be left with just 2x minus 1 is equal to, when you square this side, we shall have something like 4x squared minus 12x plus 9. Remember, we said we can use the FOIL, 2x minus 3 and then 2x minus 3. And then when you open that up, you'll have it here. There's something that I need to emphasize, especially if we have something in front of the root sign, but I will do that at the end of the solution, okay? And then let's create a standard equation now, since we've opened up. The next part, expanding, we've done, create a standard equation or standard form. So let me move this to the right. So I'll have my 4x squared minus 12x. These two will come, so it's gonna be minus 2x. I have a plus 9 when the 1 comes. I'll have a plus 1 is equal to 0. Okay, so that's gonna be 4x squared. This and that is gonna be minus 14x, and then plus 10 is equal to 0. You feel free to divide through by 2, since I see a 2 is common through. So it's gonna be 2x squared minus, That's going to be 7x plus a 5 is equal to 0. And then what I can do at this level is I can factor this out, or I can use the quadratic formula. Remember, you have two options at this level, either the quadratic or the factorization. So whichever one works for you, just go with that. So I have 2x here, then I'll have x there. For me to get a 5, I can have a 5 and a 1. But this is a plus and that's a minus, which means I must keep a minus there and a minus there. And then I'll have a 0. So from our dot product to solve this, x is going to be 5 over 2, or x is just going to be a positive 1. Just equate these ones to 0. 2x minus 5 is equal to 0, and then you solve for x. X minus 1 is equal to 0, and then we solve for x. So we arrive at these solutions. Now, so we've solved the equations. The next part, or the last part, is to test these answers of ours. Now, when you're testing, let me just go back here to the original expression. So when we test, we're going to start with a 5 over 2. Let's put the 5 over 2 where there is x, and then we see the answer we get on the left. Then we get the 5 over 2, we put it to the right, and then we see the answer we get on the right. If the answers are the same, then this answer or this solution satisfies and we shall take it. Then we go to the second one and you do that. You don't have to show us the working to that. You can just punch that directly in your calculator and you quickly do that, okay? So this is gonna be 2 times 5 over 2. We're gonna have just a 5. Then 5 minus 1 is a 4. Square root of 4 is just a 2. Okay, in this case, we normally take square roots to be just a positive answer, okay? On the right-hand side, we know that 2 times 5 over 2 is gonna be a 5 minus 3, we're getting a positive 2. So which means this solution satisfies the expression. Let's try with 1 and see. We know that 2 times 1 is a 2. Then 2 minus 1 is gonna be a 1. Then the square root of 1 will always be a 1, okay? Let's go to the right. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 minus 3 is gonna be a negative 1. So on the left, we have a positive 1. On the right, we have a negative 1. So the two solutions are not the same. So all we do, just cross this out, or you can tell us it's not a solution, or no solution, or not applicable. Okay, whichever one you want. So just cross it out, NA, no solution, whichever, then we just keep this as our only answer. Now, chances are high, you could also have both solutions satisfying the expression. All right, then to the part that I said I need to explain, okay? So what happens if, let's say, you had maybe a negative 2, and then we have a root sign of 2x minus 1 is equal to 2x minus 3. Yes, everything is isolated, fine. We can square this at this level. What we mean by isolate is normally if we have a plus or a minus sign that is around the root sign, that should be taken away to the other side. Now, when you square this, these two, from our laws of exponents, these two must affect the negative 2. So any negative number squared will give us a positive result. So that would be like a 4. And then when you square this, the root falls away, then you have your 2x minus 1, and then you're good to go. All right, then let's look at part B. Part B, so step number 1 is already done, so which means we're just gonna focus on step number 2, which is the squaring both sides, okay? So I square this side, and then I square this side. I'll have the 4x minus 3 is equal to 25, okay? Then I'll just move the 3 that side, so 4x is equal to 28. Then I will divide both sides by 4. Then x is going to be a 7. All right, so this we don't have to test anything since it's already just one solution. All right, then let's look at part C. Part C, we have the root sign, root 2 minus x, minus 4 is equal to x. So let's isolate the root since there's a plus minus sign around here. So we move the 4 to that side. So that becomes root 2 minus x is equal to x plus 4. And then what we shall do is square both sides. So square here and then square there. So root sign falls away. We have 2 minus x is equal to x squared plus 8 times, no, that's going to be 8x, then plus 16. All right, then let's create a standard form, move everything to the right. It's going to be x squared plus 8x plus x plus 16 minus 2 is equal to 0. X squared plus a 9x, that's going to be plus a 14, must give me a 0. I can use my factors or the quadratic formula, okay? There's always an R. So that's going to be x and x numbers I multiply to give me 14. It's going to be 7 and 2. When I plus that, I get a 9. Thank you. So when I solve this, the first x value has to be a negative 7. The other x value has to be a negative 2. Then let's test these answers and see. Okay, so remember when you're testing, we said we use the original expression, the original equation. So let's substitute this into the equation and we see. So we have 2 minus 7, which gives us a 9. Square root of 9 is going to be a 3 minus 4 should give us a negative 1 on the left. But then here it's equivalent to x, which is a negative 7. So the two solutions are not the same. So I'm going to cross this out to show that this is not a solution. Okay, let's try with negative 2. We know that 2 minus 2, that's going to be 4. Square root of 4 is going to be a 2. Then that 2, when you subtract 4, you get a negative 2, which is equal to x, and it's a negative 2. So this solution will be left out the way it is. So this crossed out. All right, so that is question option C, question C. All right, D. Let's look at D. So with D, just more or less the same as what we had, okay? What we're saying, let's move this that side so that we have square root of 5 minus 2x is equal to 1 plus just the 2x. Step number 2, square both sides. The root sign falls away. You have 5 minus a 2x. Let's fix that. We're saying it's a 5 minus 2x is equal to 1 plus 4x plus 4x squared. If we use the FOIL, okay? Let's create a standard equation. It's going to be 4x squared plus a 4x plus a 2x plus a 1 minus 5 is equal to 0. Simplify this further. It's 4x squared plus 6x. This is going to be a minus 4 is equal to 0. I can divide through by 2 just to make life a bit easier. So that's going to give me 2x squared plus 3x minus 2 is equal to 0. Then all I'll do is just factor out or use the quadratic formula. So if that is 2x and this is x, I need a negative 2, which means I have a 1 and a 2. If I put a 2 here and a 1 here, I'm looking for positive 3, which means this must be positive, this must be a negative. Would that make sense? That's a 4 minus 3. So 4 minus 1 is a 3 minus 2. Okay. Then what I'll have when I'm solving, x is going to be a half, or x is going to be negative 2. Then our next step is just to test these solutions of ours, okay? So when we are testing, we said we're using a half. So it's going to be 5 minus 2 times a half, which is going to be 5 minus 1, which is a 4. Square root of 4 gives us a 2. And then 2 times a half is 1. So 2 minus 1 gives us 1. So which means this answer is correct. Let's try negative 2. So 5 minus 2 by negative 2, that's going to be 5 minus 4, which is a 1. Square root of 1 is a 1. Minus, we're saying 2 by negative 2, which will give us a plus 4. And that gives us a 5. The right-hand side is just having a 1. So this solution does not stand. All right, so we've tested our answers and we've come to a conclusion. So that is how we work with questions that involve surds or equations that have surds within them, okay? Let me just extend this to these exponential equations as well, just these two, so that we see how we work them out. So we have a 96 is equal to 3x to the exponent of 5 over 4. So whenever we have exponential equations, step number 1, we just need to look at the rules. Yeah? The rules surrounding exponential equations are that if we have a to the m is equal to a to the n, okay, so for as long as the bases are the same, which means the exponents must also be the same. That is rule number 1. Rule number 2, if I have x to the exponent of p is equal to y to the exponent of p, if the exponents are the same, then definitely even the bases have to be the same. Okay, so these are the two conditions that we can use, okay, when solving exponential equations, okay? So step number 1 for this one, we just need to get rid of the 3, okay? Divide both sides by 3. So we shall have x to the 5 over 4 is equal to, that's gonna be like a 32, yes. So if that is a 32, what I need to do in this next step of mine is to get rid of the exponent 5 over 4, okay? So we can get rid of the 5 over 4 exponent by multiplying the exponent here using the reciprocal or the multiplicative inverse, okay? So this is gonna be like times 4 over 5 and then times 4 over 5. So this will cancel out and then I'll just be left with x. So I know that 32 can be written in exponential format. It's gonna be 2 to the 5. Now I'm multiplying it by 4 over 5. So this 5 will cancel that. I'll have just 2 to the 4, which becomes a 16. Now that is, I've not used any calculator there, just you go straightforward. Okay, so the answer here would be a 16. But if you have your calculator, straightforward, just put that in, you get the answer. Let's look at the second one. Now we have 2x to the exponent of 2 over 3. Okay, is equal to 64. So what I can start by getting rid of this. So I have 2x to the exponent of 2 over 3 multiplied by 3 over 2 is equal to 64 to the exponent of 3 over 2. So this cancels that. I'll be left with just 2x. I know that 64 can be the same as 2 to the 6. Okay, so I'll have 2 to the exponent of 6, but I'm multiplying it by 3 over 2. Okay, let's see. This 2 will cancel with this. and then we shall have a 3. So which means 2x is equal to 2 to the exponent of 9. Then feel free to simplify this by dividing both sides by 2. So this cancels that, and then our x is just going to be 2 to the exponent of 8. Or you can just give us a definite answer of that, okay? So guys, that is how these equations would be approached for that matter, okay? So I'll just stop at that and wish you guys all the best. Let's meet in the next discussion.